Did you know? Rumors began circulating about a successor to the struggling Sega Saturn as early as 1995, less than a year after the Saturn's release. Lockheed Martin, who had worked with Sega on arcade boards, was said to be working on a more powerful version of the Saturn. They allegedly submitted a number of designs over the next few years, but Sega became impatient and decided to design a new system themselves. Nvidia also approached Sega, hoping to work on their new console. Their first video card, the NV1, was based on Saturn hardware. While it was powerful, it was unorthodox and difficult to develop games with. Sega gave Nvidia a chance, demanding they produce a working prototype of their hardware. When Nvidia's Saturn V08 chip returned a blank screen during the presentation, Sega dropped them on the spot. Sega's next strategy was an unconventional risk. They approached both the Japanese company VideoLogic and the American-based 3DFX, and hired them to develop new hardware. Their projects were codenamed White Belt and Black Belt respectively, as they were intended to deliver the knockout blow that Sega needed. The two teams were effectively in competition with one another, although neither of them knew it. The Japanese team was led by Hideki Sato, who had designed the Genesis. Their project White Belt was later renamed Dural, after the Virtua Fighter character. Its final codename was Katana. The White Belt team used VideoLogic's Power VR2 GPU, which was an appealing solution due to its high performance at low cost. Additionally, NEC, the company manufacturing the chip, were Japanese. Meanwhile, 3DFX were working on their version of the hardware, codenamed Black Belt. Sega partnered with Microsoft, who designed the console's OS, or operating system. Because of this partnership, the Black Belt was easy to program for, which corrected one of the Saturn's biggest flaws. The reception to this deal was positive, with many expressing relief that Sega were towing the industry line with their new console. However, success bred its own problems. 3DFX received a lot of positive attention for their powerful graphics chips, and the company soon decided to go public. They released an IPO, an intent of public offering, to let the public buy stocks in their company. To comply with US law, they had to disclose the details of their work with Sega, including details of Sega's new secret project. Sega would eventually choose to go with VideoLogic's design over 3DFX's, a decision that caused some members of Sega of America to quit in protest. Some speculate that 3DFX going public created friction between the two companies, although the ex-president of Sega America, Bernie Stolar, denies this. In retrospect, he felt that Sega should have gone with the 3DFX hardware, but he explained Japan wanted the Japanese version and Japan won. 3DFX losing the Sega project caused the stock to plummet by 43%. They filed a lawsuit against Sega claiming that they had been misled. They accused Sega of improper conduct for secretly pitting 3DFX and VideoLogic against one another, resulting in a lawsuit which was settled out of court. Electronic Arts, who were historically Sega's allies, chose not to support the Dreamcast. Though EA owned stock in 3DFX, ex-Vice President Bing Gordon denied that the lawsuit affected relationships between Sega and EA. However, he admitted that the decision to choose VideoLogic confused him. He said, if Sega had picked the direct competitor to 3DFX at the time, it would have been fine, but they picked someone we had never heard of. It was somebody's friend of somebody's friend at a Japanese country club. According to Gordon, EA distanced themselves from the console for a number of reasons. Developers had little enthusiasm for the VideoLogic chipset. Sega were indecisive about including a modem, and Sega's financial situation meant that they couldn't afford to give EA the discounted licensing deal that they'd grown used to. Ex-president of Sega America, Bernie Stolar, had a different account of EA and Sega's relationship. He claims that EA demanded exclusivity on sports games in exchange for their support. However, Sega had just purchased Visual Concepts for $10 million, and their sports games were a key part of Sega's Dreamcast strategy. Stolar offered EA third-party exclusivity, and later Sega Japan would try to entice the company with lower royalties. EA, however, stuck to their decision and turned their back on the Dreamcast. Sega had a much stronger relationship with Microsoft. After their work on the Black Belt's OS fell through, Microsoft again approached the company, offering to port Windows CE to the console as an optional OS. Windows CE was widely considered to be less versatile than the native OS, but Stolar was convinced Microsoft had ulterior motives, saying they got to learn the business and then walk away. The branding company Interbrand went through 5,000 potential names for the console. They eventually settled on Dreamcast, a portmanteau of Dream and Broadcast. Despite all of its problems, it looked like the Dreamcast was going to be the hit that Sega needed. The Dreamcast's American launch on September 9th, 1999 was huge. The console sold a record 225,132 units in its first day, and cleared 1 million units in 11 weeks. But this winning streak was short-lived. Sony unveiled the PlayStation 2 in March 1999, during the Dreamcast's Japanese launch window. Lingering doubts about Sega carried over from their failed consoles, which led many to see the PlayStation 2 as a much safer purchase. Though Sega claimed it was to promote the launch of their Sega Net service, the Dreamcast price was lowered to $149 in the face of this fierce competition. Sega intended to rely on software sales to make a profit. Unfortunately for Sega, it was very easy to play pirated games on the Dreamcast. The console used Sega's proprietary GD-ROM discs, which had 3 tracks. The first contained text files with licensing information, and the second contained an audio track that warned the user not to insert it into a CD player. The last track was the game itself. To prevent piracy, the table of contents on the disc only mentioned the first 2 tracks, so the final track would be skipped if inserted into a PC. To dump the game's data for copying, all the pirate had to do was swap the discs without the computer knowing, thus skipping the table of contents. While the Dreamcast would check for authenticity while reading the disc, hackers found an easy workaround by using the console's MILCD feature. MILCD, or Music Interactive Live CD, was another proprietary format intended to add multimedia capabilities to music CDs. This basically meant that MILCD added features such as enhanced menus, internet capabilities, and video to music albums and singles. The format was unsuccessful as no major music labels were willing to back it, resulting in just 8 discs being released in Japan. However, pirates could trick the console into booting illegally copied discs by posing them as MILCDs instead of GD-ROMs. Later versions of the Dreamcast had the MILCD feature disabled to prevent this, but by then it was too late. In September of 2000, Sega of America executives Peter Moore and Belfield came to the conclusion that the company had to withdraw from the console market. The duo prepared a Manifesto of the Future, which they presented to Sega's Japanese higher-ups in a meeting that same month. Though Microsoft had not yet announced the Xbox, Moore and Belfield were aware of their intentions to enter the gaming industry as other Sega executives had speculated. However, this meeting was the first time that Sega's Japanese leadership were told of the impending competition from Microsoft. When Moore and Belfield told them that the Dreamcast had to be discontinued, the Japanese executives walked out of the meeting, a very rude gesture in Japan. However, some ex-Sega staff, such as founder David Rosen, thought that the company ought to have withdrawn from the hardware race a lot sooner. In an interview with Next Generation magazine, he said, "I've always felt that it was a bit of a folly for them to be limiting their potential to Sega hardware." Sega announced that they would be restructuring to become a platform-agnostic third-party publisher in January of 2001. The Dreamcast was dropped to $99.95 on February 4th to expedite Sega's departure from the hardware business, and was formally discontinued on March 31st. The console had dropped further to a mere $49 by the end of 2001 as Sega tried to clear their stock. Sega's chairman, Isao Okawa, approached Bill Gates numerous times to ask if it was possible to make the Xbox backwards compatible with the Dreamcast, allowing Sega fans to migrate to a new console. While these negotiations fell through, Sega maintained a close relationship with Microsoft, signing an 11-game deal for the Xbox. Okawa returned his stock in Sega to the company and donated 85 billion yen, roughly $737 million at the time, to keep Sega afloat. He passed away soon thereafter of a heart failure in March 2001. Before it was discontinued, Sega tried to keep the Dreamcast afloat in other ways. Sega stated that they would talk about DVD playback in early 2000, hoping to mitigate backlash from the announcement that the PS2 would play DVDs out of the box. At E3 2000, Sega showed off the Dreamcast DVD player. However, Sega never addressed the DVD player after this, and many in the industry speculated that the DVD player was simply an empty plastic shell. Sega also planned to release a VMU MP3 player that could hold over an hour of 128 kilobytes per second MP3 music. Sega had apparently partnered with the online store mp3.com, but the device never came to fruition. This episode of DidYouKnowGaming is brought to you by Honey. Honey is a free, money-saving browser extension that automatically searches the net for coupons, getting you the lowest prices possible at checkout. You can see how simple it is to install Honey on screen, literally 2 clicks and it's done. You can also search on Honey to see if it has coupons for your favorite site. It was very easy for us to use coupons and save almost $10 ordering this pre-owned copy of Super Mario Odyssey from GameStop. This service works with several game retailers, and even with takeout sites like Skip the Dishes and Grubhub. To install Honey, simply go to joinhoney.com/DYKG and add Honey to your browser for free. You can also click the link in the top of the description below and see how much you can save. If you like this video, give it a like and don't forget to hit the notification bell to see all our future videos.